They thought she was just another timid royal with soft hands and a forgotten name, until she caught a dagger midair. The snow hadn't even melted on her cloak when the laughter began. Nobles in glittering gowns whispered behind champagne glasses, eyeing a girl in the storm-gray dress that didn't shimmer, didn't sparkle, because it was made not for dancing, but for surviving. She didn't bow. She didn't smile. She simply walked into winter trials like a shadow among suns. And though no one knew her name, by sunrise they all would. The wind bit through the thin silk of her cloak, but Alina didn't flinch. She stood alone at the edge of the snow-dusted cliff, her eyes locked on the shimmering lights of Valemont Palace below, a sprawl of opulence wrapped in golden glow. Laughter and music echoed faintly through the pine trees behind her, carried up the mountainside by the night breeze. Every breath she took filled her lungs with icy air and silent resolve. Tonight, she would walk into that world, the world that had buried her family in ash and rewritten her name in pity. Behind her, a man emerged from the shadows of the forest. His uniform was simple, matte black, a single silver crest on the shoulder. General Kale, her guardian, her handler, her last remaining link to the shadows where she truly belonged. "You don't have to go in there, Alina," he said quietly, his breath clouding. "You're not one of them." She didn't look back. "Exactly why I must." His jaw tightened. "They'll try to humiliate you, mock you. You're not wearing armor tonight." She turned slightly, her lips barely lifting in a calm, almost cruel smile. "I don't need armor." And then, without another word, she stepped past him, her boots crunching against the frostbitten gravel, as she headed down toward the palace entrance. The courtyard of Valemont Palace was an exhibition of ego. Exotic peacocks strutted past imported olive trees. Guests in embroidered cloaks stepped out of diamond-trimmed carriages, laughing too loudly, judging too swiftly. Alina walked past them unnoticed at first, just another girl in a dark cape, too quiet, too simple. But then her name passed from one powdered lip to another. Is that the Aramore princess? She's not even wearing real jewels. Where did they find her? A monastery? Her head remained high, but her fingers curled slightly in her gloves. She had been trained to ignore distractions in the middle of war zones. But this felt more dangerous. The battlefield of politics. Inside, the grand foyer stretched like a cathedral of gold and marble. Chandeliers the size of warships gleamed overhead. Every eye turned as she stepped through the doors. "Princess Alina of Aramore," the steward declared. The music faltered, not stopped, just stumbled, like everyone needed a second to process what they were seeing. A few clapped. Most did not. And then came Lady Morel. "Welcome to civilization, Your Highness," she purred, appearing at Alina's side with two other noble women in tow. Her gown shimmered like moonlight, but her words cut sharper than steel. "You must be freezing. I heard your people prefer bare feet and dirt floors." There was polite laughter. Thin, sharp, rehearsed. Alina met her gaze evenly. "I've walked through fire. A little frost won't kill me." Morel's smile faltered for half a heartbeat, then returned, sweet and poisonous. "Adorable. They even taught you metaphors. I suppose your etiquette lesson started last week?" She leaned closer, voice low and syrupy. "Tonight is not a charity banquet. It's the royal winter trials. Your bloodline may be royal, but your posture still says peasant." Alina's shoulders remained relaxed, her face blank. Kale's voice echoed in her mind. "Let them speak first." The powerful always reveal themselves too quickly. An hour passed. Then, too, the night unfolded with paraded elegance, dances, duels, recitals. A competition cloaked in tradition. Every royal family sent their brightest, heirs, champions, diplomats. The trials tested elegance, intelligence, and performance under pressure, an outdated pageant wrapped in patriotism, but still deadly in its consequences. And Princess Alina was scheduled last. No one expected anything. She's not trained. She probably thinks the violin is a weapon. I heard she used to fetch water for monks. In truth, all of it was true once. She had fetched water barefoot. She had slept in cellars and learned to move in silence. She had trained in the art of death disguised as survival. But they didn't know that. They only saw a girl with no titles, no charm, no sparkle. The moment arrived. Her name was called for the final performance of the night. A hush fell, but not in anticipation, rather the smug calm before collective mockery. She stepped onto the elevated stage at the center of the hall. Alone, the lights dimmed to focus on her figure. Slim, still, unspectacular. At the front row sat the judges, King Idrin, Queen Leora, and 10 noble houses flanking them. Morel smirked, whispering something that made her friends giggle. Alina's performance? Interpretive movement, a blend of combat discipline and storytelling. An unusual choice. A risky one. No music, no backup dancers. Just a girl and the floor beneath her. When she raised her hand, the silence turned thick. She began. At first, it was simple. Movement drawn from traditional Aramorian blade routines. Flowing, swift, precise. But then her feet pivoted. Her body lowered. Her arms moved in sequences so sharp they sliced air itself. Gasps. Someone laughed, thinking it a joke. But then she dropped into a spin, flung her coat aside, revealing tight, tactical underlayers beneath her gown. Every movement became faster, more deliberate, telling a story of war, of survival, of resilience through unthinkable pain. She wasn't dancing. She was fighting ghosts. One noble accidentally knocked over his glass. A younger judge whispered, That's not choreography. That's combat training." Morel leaned forward, her smirk frozen. Alina's final movement ended with her dropping to one knee, hand to her chest, breath steady, eyes glowing like steel under pressure. The room was silent. Then a slow clap from the king, followed by the queen. Then, without cue, the room erupted. A standing ovation. Even the guards looked stunned. Alina rose calmly, bowed once, and walked off the stage without glancing at anyone. Not even Morel, who sat stunned, jaw slack, fury rippling through her spine. She didn't need to look back. They knew now. This wasn't the girl they thought they could humiliate. This was a storm wrapped in silk. And she'd only just begun. The cheers still echoed in the vaulted halls of Valemont Palace. But Alina didn't stay to bask in them. While the nobles leaned into gossip and judges murmured about her technique, she disappeared quietly through the back corridor, where the candlelight dimmed and the floor turned from marble to cold stone. She found silence again, her armor, until a voice cut through it. "That wasn't performance," said a man's voice, cool, sharp, used commanding rooms. Alina turned slowly. Crown Prince Thorian leaned against a pillar, still in his ceremonial military coat, with his silver-trimmed cuffs, calculated smile, and eyes that missed nothing. He was every bit the future king. "You weren't trained for palace life," he said, studying her. "You were trained to kill." Alina didn't answer. He stepped forward. "I recognize your stances. Virelian blade forms. Aramor assassin guilds used them during the siege of Caerwyn. Most of them were wiped out." She tilted her head slightly. "And yet you recognize them. Curious." That amused him. "You surprised the entire court tonight, princess." He said it like a challenge. But surprises can be dangerous. Nobility doesn't like to be made to feel small. "I didn't make them feel small," she replied evenly. "They did that on their own." His smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Then he nodded and walked away, his boots echoing. But Alina knew the message behind his words. She had made powerful enemies tonight, and one of them had a crown. Later that night, in the private dressing wing, Alina sat at the mirror, removing her gloves. Her fingers bore faint scars, old cuts, burns, the kind earned in battle, not ballrooms. A soft knock. Kale entered, closing the door behind him. His expression remained unreadable, but the tightness in his jaw said he had seen everything. "You gave them more than they deserved," he said. "They needed to see what they never looked for," she replied. He nodded once, then dropped a folded parchment on the table in front of her. "This arrived during your performance. Anonymous, but addressed to the lost princess." She unfolded the note. "The crown smiles, but the knife is behind the teeth. Trust no one in gold." No signature. Just a small wax seal stamped with an unfamiliar crest. A snake swallowing its own tail. Alina's jaw tightened. She knew that symbol. The next morning, the trials resumed. Alina arrived dressed in slate gray velvet, her gown minimal, her presence sharper. There was no more laughter when she entered. No whispered jokes. Just silence, curious, cautious, cold. Today's trial? Strategy and diplomacy. Contestants were seated in a circular hall before a towering sand map of the kingdom. They were given fictional crises, civil unrest, invasions, broken alliances, and were expected to present solutions within strict time limits. Lady Morel was already there, sipping spiced tea, eyes glinting. When Alina sat beside her, she leaned in and whispered, "Nice performance last night. Truly peasant poetry in motion." Alina didn't respond. "You may dance like a soldier, darling," Morel continued, "but let's see how you fare in a real trial. Brute strength means nothing here." Alina turned her head slowly. "Tell me something. Lady Morel, how do you win a game when you don't even see the knife being placed on the board?" Morel blinked. Before she could answer, the Queen's steward clapped his hands. Let the trial begin. The problem was clear: an uprising in the eastern province. Corrupt governors. Famine. The fictional queen was cornered between punishing rebellion or facing war with a neighboring empire. Most nobles offer what you'd expect: elegant speeches, empty platitudes, and theatrical diplomacy. They quoted law, cited ancient treaties, and spoke in polished tones. Then it was Alina's turn. She stepped forward slowly. Her voice, when it came, was soft but edged like obsidian. "Your advisors are lying," she said to the panel. "The rebellion didn't begin because of hunger. It began because your governor's soldiers raided a village and killed 2 children over a sack of grain. The people aren't enemies, they're desperate." A few nobles shifted uncomfortably. "You want peace," she continued. "Remove the governor publicly. Offer restitution, but not in coin, in protection. Send healers, not soldiers. Send grain, not speeches. And when the empire questions your strength, invite them to see how loyalty is born, not bought." The room fell into stunned silence. Even Prince Thorian, seated near the high table, looked up from his glass. "Tell me, princess," one of the judges finally asked, "what makes you so certain rebellion begins in grief, not greed?" Alina's voice didn't waver. "Because I lived through one." After the trial, murmurs followed her like shadows. No one laughed anymore, but not everyone applauded. Morel watched her from across the gallery, her eyes darker now. That wasn't just jealousy anymore, it was calculation. Later that day, as the sun set behind the palace and the final banquet was being prepared, Alina received another note. This one was slipped beneath her door. "You've made the wrong people curious. Some flowers grow roots in blood." Another seal. Same snake. Kale paced the room when she showed him. "It's not a warning," he said. "It's a test. Someone's watching to see how you respond." "Let them." Alina said, "I'm done hiding." That evening, the grand feast was held in the great hall, with tables laden with silver trays of pheasant, glazed fruit, and spiced wine. Courtiers were their finest, and every moment was measured for spectacle. Prince Thorian stood at the head, raising a glass. "Tonight we celebrate excellence," he said, "but also revelation. There are those among us who came in as strangers and left us questioning what we thought we knew." His eyes flicked to Alina. "And so, before we close the trials, I invite one last demonstration. Not of beauty, not of strength, but of truth." A whisper rippled through the crowd. Thorian's voice rang out again. "Princess Alina of Aramor, will you join me for a dance?" Gasps. Morel nearly choked on her wine. Alina stood, her face unreadable. Slowly, she stepped into the center of the room. The music began, soft, haunting, unfamiliar. She moved carefully at first, her hand in his, their steps weaving across the polished marble. He was graceful, deliberate, but she knew what this was. A dance, yes, but also a duel. He leaned closer, voice low. "You're making enemies faster than friends." "Then I'm doing it right," she murmured. "You don't trust me?" I don't trust anyone who smiles while asking questions. He laughed quietly. Then you like this next one. He twirled her once, then asked, Who taught you the Varelian blade waltz? Her hand tightened slightly in his. He knew, not suspected, knew. She met his gaze. Why are you asking questions only assassins would know? Their steps stilled. He let her go. Everyone clapped politely. No one realized the real conversation that had just occurred. But Alina did, and as she returned to her seat, her pulse didn't quicken, but her mind did. Prince Thorian wasn't just royalty. He was part of the game. And now it was war. Snow fell steadily outside Valemont Palace, turning the courtyards into white velvet. But inside, the palace hummed with tension. Something unspoken lingered in the golden halls, hidden beneath glittering chandeliers and forced smiles. Alina felt it in every glance, every calculated whisper, every silence that stretched too long. The trials were nearing their end, but not their true conclusion. That would come tonight, because someone was going to try to eliminate her. She sat in her chamber, a fire crackling behind her, the note with the snake seal clenched in her hand. The ink had smudged slightly, likely handled with gloves, but that didn't matter. She'd seen that emblem once before, on the neck of the man who slit her uncle's throat. The Serpent Circle, a secret order of nobles, mercenaries, and war profiteers who thrive in the chaos after her kingdom fell. Many believed they were myth, but Alina knew better. Kale, she said quietly. He was standing by the window, sword strapped across his back. I'm going to draw them out. His shoulders stiffened. You already did. They've just been waiting for the right moment. She folded the note. Then let's give it to them. That night, the final unofficial trial was held in the Moon Atrium, a glass-domed structure in the palace gardens, glowing under candlelight and starshine. It was informal, meant to be just a gathering. But everyone knew better. The true victors of the winter trials were crowned here, not by judges, but by whispers, alliances, and perception. And tonight, Princess Alina of Aramor had everyone's attention. She entered in a gown the color of storm clouds, high-necked, simple, but flowing like shadow. Her only jewelry was a pin at her throat, small, steel, unnoticed by most, but not by assassins. She passed noble after noble, their conversations falling silent as she moved. They didn't mock her anymore. They feared her. But fear breeds desperation, and in desperation, people strike. Morel approached her, all elegance and polished cruelty. Lovely dress, she said, circling her slowly. Very practical, almost like you're expecting to run. Alina's smile didn't reach her eyes. Run? I thought you preferred prey that couldn't fight back. Morel's mouth twitched, but she recovered quickly. Oh, I don't fight, darling. I watch. And you might have some nobles fooled, but not everyone is seduced by your sad orphan-turned-warrior fantasy. Alina tilted her head. Then, perhaps you should stay and watch closely. Something interesting is about to happen. It happened when the lights dimmed for the ceremonial toast. The crowd raised glasses. The prince began to speak. And then, a flicker. Alina felt it, the way trained fighters do, the hairs rising on the back of her neck. Movement behind the curtains. A shadow slipping through the crowd. Too fast. Too quiet. The first blade came from a balcony. A glint of silver. She moved before it even whistled through the air, grabbing the edge of the table and flipping it sideways. Metal clanged against the shielded underside. Screams erupted. The second attacker leapt down from the rafters, dressed as a servant, mask over his face. Alina whirled, kicked him midair, and sent him crashing into a marble column. The crowd panicked, some running, some frozen. Prince Thorian stood still, watching, measuring. Kale burst through the atrium doors, sword drawn. But Alina didn't need him yet. The third assassin was already on her, taller, faster, wielding twin daggers. She ducked the first swing, blocked the second with her steel pin. Not just jewelry, but a hidden blade tip, and used his momentum to flip him over her shoulder. He slammed into the ground with a groan. And then it was silent. The attackers lay unconscious or groaning. Alina stood in the center of the shattered ballroom, breath calm, eyes blazing. A ripple passed through the noble crowd. She wasn't a performance. She wasn't a symbol. She was a weapon. Morel, frozen near the dais, couldn't hide her horror. Queen Leora stood with wide eyes, fingers over her mouth. Prince Thorian stepped forward slowly. "Is there anything you'd like to tell us, Princess Alina?" She met his gaze. They were with the Serpent Circle, and this was a message. Kale tossed the fourth note onto the marble. It bore the same wax seal. Only this time, it read, "A crown without power is just a target." The prince stared at it for a long moment. Then he turned to the crowd. "Lock the gates," he said calmly. "No one leaves the palace tonight." Gasps. Panic. Someone invited them in. He added. That silenced everyone. Because now they all realized this wasn't a failed assassination. It was an inside job. Over the next hour, nobles were questioned. Servants were searched. One of Morel's personal maids disappeared. Gone from her post. Uniform found in a serving closet. And Alina? She stood in the center of it all. Unshaken. In control. By morning, the sun rose over a kingdom that would never look at her the same again. A royal council was called. Alina stood before the crown again, but not as a competitor, as a survivor, as a future. Queen Leora spoke first. "You were mocked. You were doubted. You were tested. And last night, you were hunted." She paused. "And yet you protected all of us, even those who tried to humiliate you." Alina didn't respond. She didn't need to. Then Prince Thorian stood. He was different today. Not smiling. Not amused. Just serious. "The Serpent Circle has infiltrated our kingdom, and the only one with the training and courage to expose them stood here, uninvited, underestimated, and undefeated." He turned to the nobles. "She is not just a princess. She is a defender of the realm. And I would be honored," he added, his voice steady, "to make her our first royal commander." Gasps. Not a bride. Not a duchess. A commander. A protector of the realm.